This podcast is presented by Tommy Hilfiger, a PVH brand and an official partner of the New York Giants.
It's time to get inside the Giants huddle.
Huddle up.
On Giants.com.
Here we go.
And the Giants mobile
Get
app.
them in there. Let's go.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Welcome to the newest edition of the Giants Huddle podcast. Every year we do our beat reporter mock draft. We go to our favorite beat reporters that cover the teams around the league. We get their picks and see who might be on the board for the Giants when they select. We're keeping it simple this year. We're just going to pick number 7 since the Giants have 2 picks in the first 7 selections of the NFL draft. Joining us first, the man who covers the Jacksonville Jaguars for ESPN, Mike DiRocco. Mike, you got John Schmelk here in East Rutherford, man. Thanks for being with us again. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you?
We're doing fantastic. And, folks, as a reminder, before we get Mike's pick, you can find the Giants Huddle podcast on your favorite podcast platforms and the Giants mobile app and at giants.com/podcast. And for more draft coverage, make sure you subscribe to the Draft Season podcast, which you could find on its own podcast feed and, of course, on those Giants platforms as well. All right, Mike, the Jaguars, selecting at first overall, a place I'm sure they'd rather not be. Another reset for the organization. I guess we can kind of start here. Is it just like a huge breath of fresh air, like in that building and around the facility, you know, moving on from Urban Meyer to their new coaching staff this year with Doug Peterson?
Yeah, without question. You know, I speak to people, you know, inside that building all the time, and I ask a bunch of them, hey, let's just assume last year the atmosphere in that building was a 2 with Urban Meyer. What is it now with Doug Peterson? And, you know, without a doubt, people without fail, people are saying, you know, it's a 9 or a 10. Everybody seems to be happy inside the building, which is certainly a huge change.
That's fantastic. And obviously the most important person in that building, Mike, is Trevor Lawrence. Given everything that was going on around that young man last year, how would you evaluate his rookie season?
Well, if you look at the numbers on the field, you would sit there and go, ugh, that wasn't really good. But when you consider everything that he had to deal with off the field, and there's so much stuff that's gotten out, but that's probably just the tip of the iceberg about how bad things were. And you know, here's a kid that you just drop into that, and he plays quarterback, and he's the savior of your franchise, and he's got to deal with all that. And look, he was the guy that answered questions every single week. I mean, he was the guy that was unfortunately put out there to face the media and the music about this team every week, because Urban Meyer would sit there and go, well, you got to ask this assistant coach, or you got to ask that guy, or I'm sorry for what I did in the bar. And it was just awful. I mean, Trevor had to carry that franchise. And when you consider everything that he had to deal with, that kind of paints those offensive stats in a little bit of a different light, to be honest with you. I give the kid an A+ just because, you know, he survived it as a rookie in the NFL, not having any experience with this at all, and he became the team leader. He became the team spokesman, and he handled that situation as well as a guy that's been in this league 10, 12 years. So when you add it all together, I probably would give that kid an A for what he dealt with last year.
Now, how much of what the Jaguars are going to do going forward then is putting Trevor Lawrence in the best situation possible? And obviously this could affect what they do in the draft to give him the best chance to succeed. Because, Mike, as you well know, they could do a great job of roster building. If Trevor Lawrence doesn't succeed, nothing else really matters here, right?
Right, yeah, without question. Well, look, just look what they did in free agency, and you get a kind of an idea about that. They added Brandon Sheriff to the right guard, the all-pro right guard. They added Christian Kirk. They added Zay Jones, and they added Evan Ingram, which is a signing that people don't really talk about, but probably is going to end up being a huge, significant upgrade for them. So it's all about Trevor at this point. Going forward, every decision, and that doesn't mean every single decision you make or every player you bring in is an offensive guy and is a receiver or a skill guy or what have you, but you know, you've got to make your franchise around your franchise quarterback, and that's what I guess the Jags are starting to do at this point. They should have done that last year, but really didn't get that going for obvious reasons. But everything has to be, how can we help Trevor? How do we help Trevor develop? How do we help Trevor reach his potential? That has to be the way they approach everything they do, as long as they have Trevor Lawrence in the fold.
So what would you evaluate then as the Jaguars' biggest needs? Obviously, a team that's picking first overall, they have a lot of them on both sides of the ball. So
right.
What would you evaluate? What now that free agency's done? Where do they need the most help heading into the draft?
To me, it's pass rush. They have Josh Allen on the edge, and he had his best year as a rookie, 10.5 sacks, made the Pro Bowl as an alternate. But he had Calais Campbell and he had Unique Ngakoue on the field with him. And once those guys left, he's just not been the same guy. He's a good player and a solid, decent pass rusher, but he needs help. And you're playing in the AFC, and we know what's going on in the AFC West, but you also have Joe Burrow, you have Lamar Jackson, you have Josh Allen that you have to deal with, you have Mac Jones. You've got to be able to get after the quarterback. That's their number one need. And then after that, I probably would go with, linebacker. They've got to add some depth at linebacker there as well. They still probably need an interior offensive lineman to fill out that group there. And then after that, I still would say, maybe another corner and another wide receiver, to be honest with you, and an outside guy that can really run. So that's kind of where I would rank their needs at this point.
All right, we are recording this, Mike, 9 days before the draft. I don't know the last time we've had this much uncertainty over who the number one pick is this close to the draft. I feel like it's been a while, maybe the Baker Mayfield pick. So give me your best prediction or guess, however you want to phrase it, 9 days out. Who did the Jaguars take with the first overall pick in the draft?
Yeah, there is a lot of uncertainty, and if you look at all the mock drafts that are coming out now, they're certainly markedly different from one to another and from what they were maybe a month ago. But I think the Jaguars go Aiden Hutchinson. He fills one of their major needs. He's a guy that has proven production at a big time elite level, and he's a culture building guy. You can build your defensive culture around this guy. I just think there's some talk about Trayvon Walker, who had a massive combine, but man, Hutchinson is such a safer pick. I think you know what you're going to get. You just plug him in there, and he's 10 years in the league, and he's a double-digit sack guy. That's what you need. You've got to get after those quarterbacks, and I think the Jaguars make the safe pick and go with Hutchinson, and then they address those other needs starting in the second round.
You mentioned Trayvon Walker as the possibility. He's the hot name right now. Would anyone else you think realistically and seriously be in the mix besides those two guys?
I do think Evan Neal's a guy that should be under consider. The Jaguars have under consideration. I know, they talk about they want to work out a long-term deal with Cam Robinson at left tackle, but so far that hasn't materialized. You can take Evan Neal and you play him for a year at left guard, just the way the Ravens did with Jonathan Ogden. And then next year, you're not bringing Cam Robinson back, obviously, and then you plug him out at left tackle, and he's your left tackle for 10 to 12 years. So I think those three guys, Hutchinson, Walker, and Neal, are under consideration. And if the pick isn't one of those three, I'd be really surprised. But I think the Jaguars do the safe and smart thing and take Hutchinson.
And Mike, by the way, before we say goodbye, you will love Evan Ingram. That kid, he is such a nice guy and just great to talk to. He got put in a bad situation here. A lot of different coordinators, quarterbacks. The fans gave him a really hard time. But I know everyone in this building, from the coaches to his teammates to his players, they all loved him. Everyone did. And you will have a great time covering him. He is really a really good kid.
Well, and that's good to hear. I mean, we got him obviously at a press conference setting after the signing, and some of that kind of came through. He was pretty interesting to talk to, good to deal with, and had some really good insight. And I'm looking forward to media being able to get back into the locker room and we can talk to these guys one-on-one. So that's going to be fantastic. And Neal is definitely one of those guys that Ingram is definitely one of those guys that I want to get to know a little better. Yeah,
you'll definitely like him, and I can't wait to get back in that locker room as well. Good stuff, Mike. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much. Anything you want to put out there where the folks can find you? Anything you have on your plate right now?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ESPN DIROCCO, and hopefully I'll look like a genius when they make that Hutchinson pick. That's basically what I'm hoping for at this point.
Hey, look, Mike, I know you guys have the first pick and everything. The AFC South, as much as any other division, is wide open this year. So maybe you guys can make a little noise if Lawrence takes a big leap and some of these other young guys play well. Who knows? Best of luck this year, man. Have fun.
Appreciate it.
That's Mike DiRocco again. He covers the Jacksonville Jaguars for ESPN. And now we welcome in our next guest. Now, the fun part of this mock draft today, folks, is that we are doing all these picks back to back to back. So I'm going to bring the next guest on, and they're not going to know who the picks are. So we're going to get live reactions just like GMs in a war room, which is great. So let's go to pick number 2. He is Jeff Risdon. You've heard him on our programming. I think this is the third time this draft season. He's from Real GM, also covers the Lions for Lions Wire. Jeff, it's good to talk to you again, man. How are you?
Very good to be with you. I'm very curious as to how this board is playing out, even though I'm picking it second here, because I don't know.
Yes, and it shows you, by the way, and I said this to Mike when I called him, this is probably as much uncertainty, and we're recording this 9 days before the draft, that we've had with that first overall pick probably since Baker Mayfield, right? And we kind of had figured that out, maybe 3 or 4 days prior. So who do you think the Jaguars pick? Let's have some fun with that.
I think they took Trayvon Walker, but I don't know that, and it's still very much up in the air. Like I was talking to people yesterday. This is such a fun draft. I'm enjoying the fact that I don't know who's going at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I kind of like it that way. It's a little bit more fun. I like the suspense. It keeps me engaged.
Yes, and Jeff, they did not make it that easy for you. They selected Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan. So the easy...
Oh, that's who I wanted.
I know it was. The easy run-up-the-card scenario for the hometown boy in Detroit is not going to work out. So Hutchinson is off the board. The Lions are up here at number 2. Let's start here. This is the year 2 of the Dan Campbell regime. Is this still build slowly since the team doesn't have their franchise quarterback? Is a big jump expected this year? Where are they in their stage of their building process?
They are looking to get better. They are looking to make it work around Jared Goff. I know a lot of people roll their eyes when they hear that. This regime really likes Jared Goff, and they think that it can work long term. Now, would they be opposed to taking a quarterback later that maybe could challenge him? Probably not. But it ain't happening at 2. Their goal is to build a team that can rise up out of the cellar of the NFC North. And with the way that things have gone in Chicago, that's not an unrealistic expectation this year. You got to get playmakers, though. This team is devoid of playmakers on both sides of the football. So at number 2, you got to get somebody who can come in right away and make a positive impact at a position, an important position, whether that's pass rush or defensive back or wide receiver. They're good on the offensive line. That everywhere else pretty much needs some help. So that's sort of where they're at.
Yeah, you kind of touched on there very quickly. Can you dig a little bit deeper into what the biggest needs are for Detroit here?
Yeah, so the biggest needs, they have to get a playmaker in the back end of the defense. And it's more likely to come at safety than it is at corner. They're decent at corner. They've got a lot of young players that have showed some promise there. Safety right now is Tracy Walker, Deshaun Elliott, who they signed last week on a 1-year deal, who's missed more games than he's played, and that's it. Like that's literally their safety room. And this is a defense that wants to run 3 safeties as a base defense some of the time. So they got to get somebody in there. So Kyle Hamilton is absolutely in play here. Pass rush, Romeo Okwara, his little brother Julian are one side. Romeo was great in 2020, got 10.5 sacks devoid of any schematic help. Last year's reclamation project, Charles Harris, is on the other side. They got to get somebody who's better than those guys. And no offense to either of those guys. Both those guys can play, but they got to get the guy who can get you 12.5 or more sacks year in, year out, and not be a liability against the run on the way there, too. So that's Trayvon Walker, Kayvon Thibodeau. Jermaine Johnson enters the picture here. Those are all the guys. That's probably about the only place we're considering. Like wide receiver, they need help. That's coming 32, 34, or 66 when they pick later on. You're not taking a wide receiver 2 in this draft.
Jeff, and I think that's actually an interesting question to ask you then. Since they're picking at 32 and 34, they have the pick from the Rams, from the Goff trade, the 32nd overall pick. Of course, I'm sure Lion fans are sitting there. Of course, this is the year the Rams win the Super Bowl, the year we have their first-round pick. But how much do they calculate? All right, where's the depth in this draft? What can we get at 32 and 34? Will that impact what they do at 2? Or when you're picking that high, are they just thinking, all right, we're going to pick the guy we think is going to be the best player, period?
No, it's a very good question, and I do think it impacts him, and I think it rules out Kyle Hamilton at 2 because this is a phenomenal safety class. So you can get me Lewis Sling, Daxton Hill, Jalen Petre, a guy like that at 32 or 34,
Yeah.
is there that big of a drop-off from Hamilton? Look, Hamilton's the best player on my board. I think he's the number one player in this draft for me. But the drop-off from him to those guys is not as radical as what it is from getting your top pass rusher to getting a guy like Boye Mafe or George Karlaftis or somebody like that down in that range. So I'm looking pass rusher, and I think that's their mindset too. I think they're going to go with pass rush, and I'll tell you this right now, I'm not sure that they know who they're taking it to yet. So this will just be my best educated guess on what we know. They've met with all those guys. They worked out Trayvon Walker at his pro day. In fact, Kelvin Shepard is the Lions linebackers coach. He actually put Walker through the drills at linebacker, and this is going to sound crazy. He was faster in those drills than Nakobe Dean was. That's what kind of athlete you're looking at in Trayvon Walker.
Oh
so that's why people are intrigued in him. And he does that at Dean is 5'11", roughly 220. Walker is what 6'5", 275. That tells you what kind of a special athlete you're looking at, and that's one of the reasons why he's in primary consideration. But look, they spent a lot of time on Kayvon Thibodeau. The general manager, Brad Holmes, saw him play in person last fall. It was the only college football game that he went to. He's been out there. They sent 7 people to his pro day. They're clearly interested. Does that mean that they like him? Who knows? I kind of think they do, though. Look, there's a lot of smoke out there that they don't actually like him, that Dan Campbell in specific is opposed to him. I can't verify those. They've been out there, and it's not just the Lions that have that. He's a peculiar dude. He's not going to be for everybody. They have to weigh whether his upside is that much better than a guy like Jermaine Johnson or Trayvon Walker. Johnson, I don't think gets enough run. He's a very legitimate consideration at 2. With how he rushed the passer, the Lions coached him in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. They loved him. He was phenomenal down there. He was as impactful of a defensive player as I've seen in Mobile in the 14 years that I've gone down there. He was that good. So he's certainly a consideration here too.
Interesting. All right, so you talked about Thibodeau in depth. And by the way, Kelvin Shepard was up here with the Giants for 1 year. Great guy. Awesome dude. I'm happy he picked up that.
I'll tell you right now, that guy is going to be either a defensive coordinator or running a college program very soon.
No, absolutely. Really smart guy, too. Awesome. Just great dude. 100% agree. So what's the calculation there? You already talked about Thibodeau. How about Walker, who we know doesn't have the production but has all the traits and played really well at Georgia, just didn't have the sack production, right? And then a guy like Johnson, who's the opposite, right? He leaves Georgia to get that sack production. I agree. Honestly, if I'm asking for one guy on one play to line up one-on-one on the edge and get a sack, he might be the guy I'm picking in this draft. I think that's a legitimate conversation. So what's the calculation here, Jeff, for the front office when you're talking about Walker and Johnson?
I think one of the things that you're looking at is that this is a regime that cannot afford to miss here. And as much as they talk about, Thibodeau's upside, there's considerable downside with him. He has prolonged stretches on tape, and this leads to people asking, well, let's question his effort. Is he really trying all that hard? Well, if he is trying all that hard, like there's long stretches in games where he's just not doing anything. He's like, the meme with the stick, poke, do something, dude. I don't think I think that's going to scare them, quite frankly, more than Trayvon Walker's lack of production at Georgia scares them. And Johnson, for all the hubbub, he's a one-year wonder. He did not do great at Georgia. He did good things there in a limited role, but and also he bounced around a little bit. This is a team that, not to disparage Jermaine Johnson at all. He was an academic non-qualifier coming out of school. That goes against the grain for what this regime in particular looks for. This is a team that values academics and off-field accomplishments very highly. He just doesn't have that. So that's why, I think in all the calculus there, the signs do point to Walker.
And you already mentioned they have a good offensive line, so tackle's probably off the board. You don't think there's any chance at a corner here either?
You got to at least mention the concept of Sauce Gardner, but this is a team that took Jeff Okudah 2 years ago at number 3 overall. Look, Okudah has been hurt, but even before he was hurt, he wasn't living up to that billing. Look, he's got a big target on him. The other thing, the best corner on this team last year was an undrafted rookie free agent named Jerry Jacobs. Jerry can play. That guy's really good. I think they like the ability to develop the young talent. Amani Oruwariye on the other side, 6 interceptions last year, best tackler in the open field most of the time on the defense. They're happy with what they got there. They got Ifeatu Melifonwu from last year. They have a good core of young talent. If Okudah is healthy and back, they actually could be pretty good at the corner. So I don't think that they're going to take Sauce, but they have to have that conversation too, because he is special. He is different. He is Sauce Island. And that's like, who doesn't need an island corner, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. All right, Jeff, you're up at number 2. Aiden Hutchinson off the board. Who are the Lions selecting with the 2nd overall pick in the draft?
I'm going to go with Trayvon Walker, the defensive end from Georgia.
All right, give me your summary why.
I think his blend of high floor and incredibly high traits, it trumps the production that he had. I think the Lions feel pretty good about the defensive line that they've got around him. They've got a veteran in Michael Brockers who can help mentor him, who's been around greatness before in Aaron Donald when he was out in Los Angeles with the Rams. I think he fits in. They don't need him to be the initial flamethrower. Like, Charles Harris is back. Okwara is back. Like, they can work him in as part of a rotation that he's comfortable with. He's proven that he can do that. He can play anywhere on the line. I think that's a big thing. This is a team that's going to go with a 3-man front at times, a 4-man front most of the time. Look, he can play outside. He can kick inside. The athletic potential, again, this is a guy, his physical comparisons are Myles Garrett and J.J. Watt. Put those two hands together, you got yourself an incredible potential player. And I think they like their coaching staff's ability to develop that talent. So I think they're going to go with Trayvon Walker here.
And if Hutchinson's there, he's the pick?
I wouldn't say absolutely, but absolutely.
Jeff, always good talking to you, my friend. I appreciate it. Enjoy the draft, and we'll see exactly what happens. It should be an exciting couple days.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
That's Jeff Risdon. He covers the Lions for Lions Wire and, of course, the draft in whole for Real GM. Now we move on to our 3rd pick of the draft, a new member of our Giants podcast family. Had a chance to spend some time with him down in Indianapolis at the Combine. He is John Harris. He covers the Houston Texans. John, it's good to talk to you, man, and tell the folks where they can find your stuff and what you're up to.
Yeah, I'm the sideline reporter for the Texans, and I'm in the building every single day, so I've seen the guys coming in for the off-season program, which has been kind of nice, and I get to hang with Lovie Smith, who is maybe the coolest cat on the face of the earth. Really happy for him as he's the new head coach of the Houston Texans, and so hopefully we can take this big tanker and start moving it back in the right direction after a couple of years of just some really just tough stuff that happened here in the building and with a quarterback who is no longer here.
Yeah, it's funny. We spent a lot of time off air down in Indy, talking about how the Deshaun Watson thing would finally wrap up. I got to imagine they're pretty happy with the return they got, given everything that was swirling around the quarterback, John.
Yeah, John, I felt the same, and it really was Nick Caserio who drove that and said the way that he handled all of that in that situation was so much more complicated because of Deshaun's no trade clause. And the way that Nick handled it, I thought was brilliant, and said, look, you got to have the American Idol golden ticket to get to Hollywood, so to speak. And if you've got that, then we'll let you talk to Deshaun. He handled it brilliantly. He got the 3 first-round picks, but he ended up getting a third and a fourth as well. And for everything that was swirling around Deshaun, I think to be able to bring that draft capital back to Houston over the next 3 years, I think was just huge. So, and then, of course, on top of the fact that Deshaun takes all that ample baggage he had legally, and that all moves up to Cleveland. And in the press conference the day after the trade, I think it was the first sentence that Nick Caserio said. He just was asked about it, and he said, you know what, we all have clarity now. And that's what we were looking for. Last year at this time, it was so murky. I mean, we couldn't see 2 feet in front of our face down in the ocean. But now we're swimming around in blue waters. We know where we want to go. We've got some ample trade or draft assets to maybe trade down, maybe get more to build this thing back up where we had it. But now there's clarity, and I think that's a good thing going into this draft in 2022.
All right, so John, I think this is a good place to start, and we're going to talk about needs, but I will tell you who the first two picks were, so you can spend the next couple minutes to think about who you want to select as we discuss the team. So Aiden Hutchinson went first overall. Trayvon Walker went second overall. So those are the two guys that will not be there for the Texans. I'm sure you're probably not that surprised by the fact those are the first two guys that went, maybe the order, but those are the two guys that are gone. So now let's talk team needs. You mentioned it. Clarity, clean slate. To me, the Texans are the ultimate wild card here. They have so many needs. They can go in so many directions. How would you quantify and qualify their biggest needs heading into the 2022 draft?
I think, John, to think about their needs, especially at pick number 3, and then they also have 13 as well, to look at their needs. I mean, I've seen a number of websites that are like everything, and it's not totally wrong. But in the first round, I think there are positions they won't draft, as crazy as it sounds. Quarterback, running back, tight end. Anything else, I think, is sort of fair game. Now, the other thing I don't think they will draft is a true offensive tackle. Now, I say that because two of the best offensive linemen on the board, Evan Neal and Ike Ekwonu, can both play guard. But a guy that I really love is Charles Cross from Mississippi State. He can't play guard. He is a pure tackle. I don't think the Texans will be looking at him given what they've got up front. Laramie Tunsil, they had discussions in the offseason. There was talk about a trade. They sat down and said, no, we're good. We like the marriage. We're staying. More than likely, that moves the only first-round pick that we have in the last how many ever years, Titus Howard, probably out back to right tackle. So I think our tackle situation is okay. But it doesn't preclude us from looking at an offensive lineman at number 3, as long as that guy can play guard, because you never know how things are going to turn out in the next couple of years at tackle.
Sure.
And you've got a guy in-house if you need to. Everything defensively is open in free game. Everything. D-line, edge, linebacker, safety, corner. Everything on the defensive side is free game. So what's not quarterback, running back, tight end, they won't be part of this first round at all. Anything else to me is free game for this team. They need elite players at every position, really. Minus tackle, maybe, because they've got a guy like Tunsil there. Minus wide receiver, because they've got a little bit of depth, and they brought Brandon Cooks back. Everything else, John, pick a card and let's go.
Okay, so then what's weighing on the scales here? Is it Lovie Smith being a defensive coach? Is it finding a player at a premium position? Because those are obviously very expensive to find in free agency. What's going to weigh the scales then in terms of how you decide what direction to go here at 3?
Well, I think for this team, because it does have a number of needs, I think you can look at what's the phrase, best player available at a position of need? Well, I think all of them are positions of need. I think the biggest thing is just finding guys that fit the athletic mindset, that have elite traits. I think the two offensive linemen, Neal and Ekwonu, have it. I think you could argue that Kayvon Thibodeau has it. I don't know if Kayvon's the best fit, but the more that I've thought about Kayvon, I think, okay, maybe I could see that happening. Stingley and Sauce Gardner, they've got traits. They play corner. I don't know that corner has ever been prioritized for Lovie Smith. And then the Lovie Smith-Nick Caserio connection is really interesting because they spent the last year where Nick comes from a 3-4 odd front, Lovie comes from a 4-man front, even front sort of thing, and you'd think polar opposites, and yet they kind of came to ground talking about defense last year. I think they want to have versatile dudes on the defense. So a guy like Trayvon Walker would have made a lot of sense because they can bump him inside, outside, but it's going to be a 4-man surface. And that edge player has got to be a guy that holds up well against the run and gets to the quarterback with some twitch. I think Kayvon does it, but maybe not as well as they would want it at 3. I think they've got to improve the physicality on this team. And so the guy that I'm thinking about taking, I think will do that.
All right. Well, you did not mention safety at all here, John. Kyle Hamilton is somebody that, people do have high on their boards. Would he be a consideration here for Houston at number 3?
He is number 1, John, on my Harris 100. I love Kyle Hamilton. Now, I'm a little biased. I did play safety. But at 6'4", 221, and I know people panic about the 40 time and all that kind of stuff. I thought that's overblown when you watch the guy play in the field.
Totally
you
agree.
see what he does.
Yep.
Kyle Hamilton is absolutely in play. And I feel like what I'd ultimately like to do, you said, John, what would I like to do? Trade down. Now, if I find a trade down partner, I am trading down as long as I can stay within the top 10 to 12. I would trade down because we just have a lot of needs. We need a lot more players, second, third rounders, those type things. So if I could trade down, that would be the ultimate thing. In my mock, I traded down with Atlanta, and I moved to number 8, and I took Kyle Hamilton. I think Hamilton's probably 7 to 10 in that range. So if I trade down in that range, I think Kyle probably makes a little bit more sense. But I feel like with the 31st and 32nd ranked run game the last couple of years, there's a pretty clear spot of where I want to go with this.
Interesting. All right, my final question before you make your pick here, John. How does also picking at 13 impact your thought process here? Does that kind of cancel out the wide receiver because you could get one at 13, would you want? Or maybe a different spot. You're saying, all right, well, at 13, I can still get a good player at that position, so maybe I'm not going to consider them at 3.
I think the edge spot is interesting to me. I know two of them, Hutchinson's a true edge. I think Trayvon Walker is a guy that bounces inside outside.
Agree.
So I don't know if call him a true edge, but I think there are some true edges that you can get within the top 13 picks. I think that Sauce or Stingley, one of them could potentially fall. If they don't, then maybe Hamilton falls. I think you're going to end up at 13 looking at a player that could have gone at number 3, that you thought about at number 3, and you're going, wait a second, Jermaine Johnson's still here? I want to have guys that are going to impact up front and are going to impact the edges, and I want to bring some physicality back to this team. Watching this run game the last few years has just been god-awful. Just brutal. So the running back is needed too. But the running back is going to have to come either at pick 37 or 68 or 80 in the second, third round of day 2. I think you can find a running back all the way through priority free agent and find somebody in this draft. It's a very deep draft in running back. It's just not – it doesn't have it doesn't have a number 1 clear-cut guy that would go in the first round, but it's got a lot of really interesting, versatile pieces, and one that I think could help the Texans, and they'll find a running back. But up front, I think there are some elite offensive linemen that would be elite in any year of the draft, and that's where I'm going to go with this.
Yeah, you've teased it. I think I know where you're going here, John. Make your pick. Hutchinson 1, Walker 2. You're up with the Houston Texans at the 3rd overall spot.
I had this conversation with James Lippert, director of scouting of the Texans, and he asked me if I had seen Ike Ekwonu from NC State and studied him, and I looked at him and said, have I seen him? And I got the same look back from him. I don't know if that was telling a year out, but I know I love watching Ike Ekwonu. I love the way he plays. I think he would be a fantastic guard until there's changes at tackle, and then he can bump back out to tackle at number 3. I'm going to take Ike Ekwonu from NC State.
John, good stuff. Enjoy the season. Thank you so much for joining us on this year's Giants Huddle Mock Draft.
You got it, John. Thank you very much for having me.
We thank John Harris, sideline reporter for the Houston Texans, for joining us. We have our first 3 picks in the bag, and now we go to pick number 4. We just go a few miles west down to Florham Park with the New York Jets, Rich Cimini, who covers them for ESPN. Rich, you got John Schmelk here in East Rutherford. Hope you're doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's draft season. It's what's better than that for the Jets and Giants?
Yes, sadly, the regular season has not gone so well. So, yes, draft season has been the star of the show for the past few years, Rich. No doubt about it. All right.
It's Super Bowl week.
Yes, it is. And we are recording this about 9 days prior to the draft. So, Rich, the first 3 picks off the board, the Jacksonville Jaguars selected Aiden Hutchinson. The Detroit Lions, with Jeff Risdon, selected Trayvon Walker. The Houston Texans, after saying they basically could pick anyone at any position, selected Ike Ekwonu out of NC State. So you're up with the Jets at number 4. And much like the Giants here, Rich, you guys have 2 picks very high in this draft. How essential is it for the Jets to nail these picks to finally, under this regime with, Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, to start making some progress here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this has to be the watershed draft for the Jets because if you look at, they do have 5 picks out of the first 69 and 4 of the first 38. And the reason they got those picks is they traded off assets such as Sam Darnold and Jamal Adams. They traded off players like that, to build for the future. And so the future's now for Joe Douglas. I mean, there's no more excuses. The team was 4-13 last year. I think we all expected that kind of year, but the honeymoon's over. And with, if they nail this draft, and there's no reason not to with that many picks, they should take a huge step up this year. I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team. I think it's too soon for that. But, they should be hovering around the 500 mark this year. And you're absolutely right. This is actually the first time in the common draft era that the Jets have 2 top 10 picks. So they should hit 2 home runs, but we'll see.
So I imagine there's a bit of a push and pull here, Rich, right? Because you want to give the quarterback, Zach Wilson, as many weapons as you can to succeed and put him in the best possible situation. Because as you well know, everything else can go right. If the quarterback busts, none of the other stuff really matters. That's how important the quarterback in the league is now. It's kind of the same thing with the Giants with Daniel Jones and trying to find their franchise guy. But at the same time, the Jets defense last year was, quite frankly, pretty awful, and they have a defensive-minded head coach. So what's the push and pull here in terms of trying to help the quarterback, but also trying to make the defense something you can actually win with?
Yeah, I think push and pull is a great way to describe it. Now, at the owners' meetings a few weeks ago in Palm Beach, they were joking about Saleh and Douglas were joking that maybe they'll have a bare-knuckle fight to see what happens, because we know Joe Douglas likes to draft offensive linemen. He was a former offensive lineman, and so that's why I think if Ike Ekwonu were available for the Jets at 4, I think he would be a strong consideration. Robert Saleh is a defensive guy, and their defense stunk last year. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they finished 32nd in so many categories. They were non-competitive in some games, and so they have some severe needs on defense, starting with edge rusher. And I think Robert Saleh, he needs edge rushers as much as he needs oxygen. His defense is predicated on getting to the passer in that 4-3 front. So I think there could be a push and pull. Do they go with an offensive player to help Zach Wilson, or do they just try to help that defense, which just has so many holes in it?
All right, so let's attack the offensive side of this first then. Mekhi Becton is someone that they drafted a couple years ago. He has not hit as well as they would have liked. They have veteran offensive tackles, George Fant's out there too, right? So what is the calculation there? You mentioned if Ekwonu's there. Evan Neal's a guy that's also played both tackle spots. He's played guard too. Would he be in the mix there? How do they view just that kind of crew they have on the offensive line in front of Wilson?
Yeah, it's definitely a better offensive line than what they had for a couple of years ago. I think it all hinges on Mekhi Becton. There's still questions about him. I mean, he missed basically all of last year with that knee surgery. He was in lousy shape at the end of the year. I was told that he was he was north of 400 pounds last year.
Oh, man.
Yeah, which is about 40. About 40 above his combine weight from a couple of years ago. So he's working his way back into shape, and that injury he's still rehabbing, so he's a big question mark. And they did improve with Laken Tomlinson. I thought was a real nice pickup. He's going to be their left guard. Elijah Vera-Tucker, their number 1 pick from last year, is going to be their right guard. McGovern's at center for now. I think they're okay with him, although if Tyler Lindenbaum somehow slips to 35, I think the Jets would take him there. But the tackles is up for grabs. If they draft a guy like Ekwonu, obviously he's going to start at one of the 2 tackle spots, and then Becton and George Fant battle it out for the other spot. They'd have they'd have 6 starting caliber offensive linemen, which would give them great depth. And there's always the possibility, albeit slim, that they trade Mekhi Becton. I just don't think he has much trade value at this point. But I just want to mention that just on the off chance it happens. I really doubt it happens, though.
Interesting. All right, so offensive line in the mix. All right, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. And, you mentioned it, that from where Robert Saleh is from in San Francisco, just looked at how they drafted, right? It was defensive lineman after defensive lineman after defensive lineman after defensive lineman. Though I think you can make the argument, Rich, that maybe corner is a bigger need given the roster. So how are they balancing out their, what Saleh wants and maybe what they might need at cornerback? Because there could be 2 guys at those 2 spots with similar grades here at number 4.
Yeah, I've seen some mock drafts where Sauce Gardner going to the Jets at 4. I'd be surprised if that happens, and here's why. I mean, they did sign DJ Reed in free agency. It was not a small contract. It was 3 years, $33 million, so they made a fairly significant investment in DJ Reed, who comes in from Seattle. He had been with Saleh in San Francisco. So it's a good scheme fit. So he's their number one corner, and they really like the other guys, the young guys like Bryce Hall and Brandon Eccles, who were the two starters last year. They're going to battle it out for the second spot. So I don't think, like, internally within the building, they don't feel the cornerback need is as big as people outside the building think. And if you look at where Saleh came from, San Francisco, he was also with Seattle, they tend to find their corners in the middle rounds. They'll draft guys who are system corners who can play zone.
Yeah.
Seattle found Richard Sherman in, the fifth round? So I don't think, even though we consider it a premium position, I think in their system they don't. So I would be surprised if they took Sauce Gardner at 4, or Derek Stingley Jr. for that matter.
Is Kyle Hamilton at all in the mix here at 4?
I'd be really shocked at 4. I mean, if he's still there at 10, I couldn't totally rule it out there. Joe Douglas is from the premium position school. If you go back through his drafts, very rarely does he stray from that philosophy. Safety is not a premium position. The reason they traded Jamal Adams a couple of years ago was because he just didn't want to pay that kind of money for a safety.
Sure.
So I think I would say I would seriously doubt it at 4, and I think maybe a small chance at 10. Although he is exactly what they need, to be quite honest. I mean, they did sign Jordan Whitehead from Tampa to be a strong safety, but they need that middle safety, that center fielder type who can make plays on the ball. Of course, Marcus May is gone. He went to New Orleans, so they do need a guy like Hamilton who would be a perfect scheme fit. It just might be a little pricey for them going that high in the draft.
So I don't want to get off of 4 for too long, but a lot of people kind of just penciling in a wide receiver at 10. Is that a safe thing to do given what the Jets need and kind of where that pick is landing in terms of value with the class, or do you think that's a little hasty?
No, I think that's a fair pick there. I mean, look, the Jets showed their hand a couple of weeks ago when we found out they were the runner-ups in the Tyreek Hill sweepstakes. We know how they were willing to give up a couple of 2s and a 3 and pay an exorbitant contract to a 28-year-old wide receiver who's great, but is 28 years old. So we know they're really looking for that wide receiver 1. He is not on the roster right now. And so absolutely, I think at 10, wide receiver is very much in play, assuming they don't make a trade. I still think I'm not ready to totally rule out the possibility of a Deebo Samuel or an A.J. Brown. It's a long shot. It's like a Hail Mary at this point, but I'm just not ready to say that's quite dead yet. But if they keep that 10th pick, I absolutely think like a Drake London or a Garrett Wilson would be. And I've heard Jameson Williams. He's the name who I've been hearing a lot over the last week. Even though he's injured, the Jets might take a roll of the dice at 10.
So based on this conversation, Rich, I imagine the 3 guys that are gone are probably the 3 guys you would have kind of penciled in for the Jets at 4 if one of them was still available. Is that fair? And now that they're gone, who are you picking at number 4?
I absolutely think it's fair. I think, and I don't know, obviously I don't know what the Jets draft board is, but it would not totally shock me if it reads the way your first 3 picks just came off the board, with Hutchinson, Walker, and Ike Ekwonu. So in the 4th spot, the Jets, I think, would take Kayvon Thibodeau, the edge rusher from Oregon, here in the 4th spot. He's an interesting guy. I wrote a story on him this morning on ESPN.com. He's got a lot of upside. He's been the best player at every level. He was like the number 1 recruit coming out of high school. At Oregon, he was an instant star as a freshman. He's got good production. He's got good speed. He's got the stuff you're looking for. But, there's some questions about his motor, a little hot and cold. He's a very interesting personality. He's brash. I've heard him called arrogant. He's got a lot of off-the-field interests. I think he made $400,000 last year on NILs in college, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But he's very, he's very into his brand, and I think he turned off some people at the scouting combine with how much he talked about his brand. He'd be interesting in New York for sure. I think he probably wants to go to New York. I think there is, there's some hesitation there. He's not a flexible guy. He's got straight line speed, but I don't know if he has the bend that you're looking for.
Totally agree.
But like we talked about earlier, the Jets need an edge rusher, and I think he'd be the best guy on the board. So I would, say fairly confidently that if this is the way it falls, I think Kayvon Thibodeaux would be their pick.
Rich, thank you so much for the time. It's great to talk to you. Let's talk soon. Enjoy the next week or so leading up to the draft. This is big time. Hopefully the Jets will start taking some steps forward just as well as the Giants here in East Rutherford, man. Thanks so much for the time.
You're welcome, John. Have a good one.
Giants season tickets are on sale now for the 2022 season. In addition to ticket savings, membership benefits include access to exclusive events, experiences, pre-sales, and more. You can lock in your seats starting at just $100. Call 888-NYG-1925 or visit Giants.com/tickets for more information. All right, we thank our buddy that covers the New York Jets, Rich Cimini, for making the pick for the Jets at number 4. And now we get to the first moment of decision for the New York Football Giants. And to make that decision, we're joined by Dan Duggan, who covers the New York Football Giants for The Athletic. Dan, good to talk to you, my friend. So the first 4 picks off the board are Aiden Hutchinson, Trayvon Walker, Ike Ekwonu, and Kayvon Thibodeaux. Your thoughts?
I think that if I'm Joe Schoen, I'm feeling pretty comfortable because I think the first goal for any GM in a draft is to get the best player possible. The second goal is probably not to do something that's going to get you fired. And I think having the way this board broke, I don't think there's really any pick that could really come back and haunt you if they take the guy who I'm going to eventually announce. But I just think Thibodeaux is a guy who could get dangerous because there's some high upside, but also some question marks there. And obviously Trayvon Walker has the traits, but the production wasn't there. So if you pass on either one of those guys, and then they go on to become some defensive player of the year, sack master type guy, people are going to remember that for the next 10, 15 years. Whereas if they're already off the board, hey, kind of some tough decisions got taken out of your hands, and I think a pretty easy one falls to the Giants with the way these top four picks went off the board. Yeah, so let's go around the merry-go-round before we make the pick here. What are your top needs for the Giants heading into this draft? Obviously I think the first one, as we're alluding to here, is offensive tackle. They basically plugged some holes in free agency, even if it wasn't, big money signings, obviously, where, all right, they have some veteran guys that can play certain positions. They kind of left that right tackle spot wide open, I think by design, knowing that they would probably find a guy in the draft to fill that spot. I think edge rusher is certainly a spot that, they have some guys there, but could certainly use, that game breaker type edge rusher that this franchise has had, so many times throughout their history. And again, if things fall out differently, a guy like Walker or Thibodeaux would definitely be enticing. And then I think the other one is cornerback, and obviously James Bradbury's situation is unresolved at the time we're doing this. I think we all expect that to be resolved sooner than later, and that becomes a bigger need, once he's elsewhere. So I think those are the 3 biggest ones, the 3 premium positions. So I think you feel good taking any of them with this 5th pick. So really it depends how those first 4 picks unfold, I think, to really determine what the Giants do. I don't think they need to force anything. I think a good player at one of those positions will definitely be there at number 5. Yeah, we are recording this, and all these picks are being recorded on the Tuesday prior to the draft, so that's 9 days before the draft. It's going to go up on Wednesday, but if anything happens after we record this, that's so you know why. How do you think the Bradbury thing's going to be resolved, Dan? Because we're kind of all in a bit of a holding pattern with that. Yeah, and I don't think we're in any jeopardy of that happening between now and the time you run this podcast. I think he's going to be here through the draft. I really thought around the combine something would happen quicker than obviously it has, and then there was sort of that time right around the start of the new league year where it felt like, he had that $2 million in his salary guarantee. Would that be a kind of a soft deadline where Shane would maybe just cut him then just to get him off the books? But he's dug his heels, and he clearly wants to get something back for a guy who, as he said at the owners' meeting, it felt like he was kind of giving his spiel, like 20 years old, 1 year removed from being a Pro Bowl player. But I just think the market hasn't been there because you're talking about a 1-year rental at $13.5 million, and that's just not super appealing. So it's I've kept calling it this whole process a game of chicken. At some point, someone has to give, and I think teams are just waiting and waiting and waiting. So what I think most likely happens is the chain is certainly going to be working the phones hard during the draft to try to find something, whether it's a pick swap or just a late-round pick, whatever it may be. But ultimately, I'm leaning now. I always thought he'd get traded. I'm leaning now that they might just have to cut their losses. If they can't move during the draft, I don't think a market is suddenly going to materialize. So let's say they add a cornerback in the first round or early in the draft, and then they can say, okay, we have our guy. It's a good time to do it probably that Monday after the draft because everyone's focused on all the new people. You kind of just make that move and kind of wash your hands of Bradbury, get the cap savings, which obviously we know they're going to need to sign this draft class. So It's probably it's been 50-50. I'd say I'm leaning more now towards he just ends up getting released. It just does not feel like any team wants to pull the trigger and take on that salary.
Dan, I was with you. I thought the Giants would be able to find a trade partner too. I thought 1 year at $13 million is not a big dollar amount for a corner in this league that can play and be a solid starter. But you're right. I think their best chance is that a bunch of wide receivers go early, in the draft here, and a team that's picking at the end of the first round maybe gets to a situation where they thought they'd be able to get one late first, early second. None of those guys are there, and then they need one, and then maybe they can work out a trade shortly after the draft. But yeah, I'm surprised that they weren't able to find a taker, but as of now, they have not, and they will need to find money somewhere to sign this draft class at some point, which is important. How much do you think the Giants are going to take into consideration here, Dan? And we'll see what you do at 5, and then maybe I'll ask this after you make your pick. But, they also have 2 picks in the third round, a pick in the second. Do you think they're thinking down the road here where there's a lot of depth in this class, and that might impact what they do early? Or is it just going to be, we're picking 5 and 7. We got to get the better player now?
Yeah, no, it's a great question because obviously I think it's easy to say, you got to get the better player now. But, there's a sort of a fungible amount of resources here. If the draft, you feel really great that there's 8 great edge rushers, so you're pretty confident one to be there at 36. Maybe that makes you a little less likely to pass on one at, say, 7 if you don't think the difference is that great. It's actually probably a question I'm going to ask Joe Shane when he speaks on Wednesday because I do think that's interesting. I think at the end of the day, they're not doing this arbitrarily. They have a board. They have guys ordered. But you do have to start looking at the depth of positions, I think, and how big is the gap between your number 1 offensive tackle and your number 4 offensive tackle, or vice versa with edge rushers. I think that probably weighs in, especially maybe a little later in the draft, maybe more in the 3rd and 4th rounds. I think in the first round, you have your board. You've spent all this time putting it together. I don't think you get too cute and pass on a guy who you had rated higher because you feel like you can get someone at his position in the 2nd round. I think that gets a little dicey. I think, as Joe Shane has used this expression many times, he wants to be able to sleep well at night with what he does. I think that's something that could keep you up at night because then if things don't fall right in the 2nd round, then you're like, oh, man, we never really filled that hole and we had a chance to do it early. So I think the 1st round, just take the best guy on your board. I think need is going to kind of match up with value there. But I do think it has to be at least a consideration in the back of your mind, especially as you get deeper into the draft.
No, I agree. I think that's fair. How much do you think that Shane, maybe playing it safe is the wrong word here, but it's the regime's first draft class. You're trying to set the most overused term in sports, set the culture, get the right type of foundational guys to build this program with, and, the whole smart, tough, reliable. I think the reliable and dependable, rather, that dependable part of that is kind of the important part. How much do you think he's trying to get not just the right type of player, but the right type of person, and also the guy that you feel good that this is not going to be a miss? At the very least, you're going to get a solid football player.
Yeah, well, I think that goes back to that first answer here where I was only half joking that Thibodeau is the guy who I think could really make your draft look drastically different one way or the other depending on how he pans out. I think a lot of these other guys, Aiden Hutchinson is like off the charts with his intangibles. Trayvon Walker, you hear great things. The offensive tackles, I've heard all really good things. Sauce Gardner, which is just going through all the guys there. You don't really have a lot of these, red flags or whatever cliche you want to use. They're there for Thibodeau. How serious are they? I mean, obviously, I don't know. I'm not in those meetings. You hear stuff, but it's nothing like major and criminal or anything like that. It's just sort of his attitude, his commitment, that type of thing. And when you're talking about establishing a culture, is that who you want to basically be the face of it? Because whoever you take at number 5, that's going to be the biggest move that Joe Shane makes in this first offseason, really, because, obviously they didn't do much in free agency based on the cap. So, I think that has to be a consideration. And like I said, that's why part of me, as much as you might think Thibodeau's a great player, you might say, okay, we kind of took that decision off our hands. And I think kind of any of these other guys, you don't have that same sort of question lingering. So I think it makes it kind of easier if he's gone, because then you're just kind of taking it based on football talent. You don't have to really weigh too much of that other stuff.
Now, and how much are you weighing what the coaching staff wants here? Because do we really know what exactly type of player the coaching staff wants? How much is Joe Shane going to, how much voice is the coaching staff going to be given in the draft room? We don't know how they're going to operate in that way. I think that's another interesting kind of dynamic here, Dan. And, if Joe Shane thinks the guy's the best player, but the coaches tell him, well, I don't really think he fits what we want to do. I prefer this guy. How are those conversations going to go, and how is that going to impact who the Giants take? I think that's a really interesting thing here, and something that we really can't, predict until we see how this first year goes.
Yeah, and I think I go back to, I think the buzzword right after Shane got hired was lockstep. They use that quite a bit, and after Dable got hired, of kind of having the same vision. I think that does help. That they have been in those meetings, they have worked together. Obviously, neither one of them was the number one seat, but they had big voices that were influential, work together, know what the other guy likes. Obviously, it's a little different with Wink Martindale, but he's been around the block. I think you kind of know what his type of player is. I think it would be a much bigger question if you were pairing a GM and a head coach with no background.
Right.
I would think it would be pretty smooth because these guys, again, have spent a lot of time together. They should have a pretty good idea. But, yeah, you're never going to know until they get in that room. And then you also got to factor in that, there are holdovers and people who are here who were doing evaluations long before Joe Shane was in the building. So now how does he take their evaluations into account? How does he take Brandon Brown's evaluation into account? There's a lot of pieces that have to meld together to make such a huge decision, and you only have a couple of months to figure it all out. So that is a fascinating subplot, and it's one of the challenges that when you have a new regime, other places where you just kind of run it back with the same two guys in the main seats, it's probably a lot smoother. We don't know. It'll be fascinating to see sort of how that plays out. And you'd obviously hope as they go forward, it just becomes more and more seamless.
Final question before the pick here, Dan. How much are you entertaining a trade down here? How far are you willing to go down? What's the motherload offer you would need? Do you think a team's going to look to trade up? Do you think the Giants are trying to trade down? Give me your full rigmarole on the potential of a trade down here for the Giants at 5.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that they'll be open to trading back. I think that a deal trade back scenario for me would be something where you're getting a 2023 first rounder. I think
me too.
That's where you're kind of hedging. Obviously, hey, let's hope Daniel Jones is as good as people think he is, and then hey, well, what's the worst case scenario? You get 2 first round picks next year, but you set yourself up in a situation where if you decide you have to move on, now you're going to have the capital to move up. You can get in the veteran market because it's becoming like the NBA here, where quarterbacks are on the move every offseason. It feels like. So I don't think there's anything wrong with just having 2 first round picks next year to give yourself options. How far they go back? I think in a dream scenario, you're talking like Atlanta or Seattle, 8 and 9. I don't know if that's enough to get a first round pick next year, especially because no one seems that hot on this quarterback class. I think the Giants put a little bit of a tax on that Bears trade last year, where I don't think that matched up with any of the charts. But it was like, hey, you want to go out and get a quarterback, you're going to have to pay for it. I don't know that they find teams as desperate to do that. So I think that they'll certainly be active and interested in moving back. Ultimately, I have a hard time seeing them pull it off. Maybe even 7 becomes more likely after they get whoever they want at 5, and then a team's only moving up a few spots. At that point, maybe you're moving up for a tackle or an edge rusher, and maybe you don't get a 2023 first, but you get a second-round pick this year. You get a couple mid-round picks this year, something like that, just to kind of keep building the depth, or you move back a little bit in the first round, something like that. I could see, but I just think I have a hard time seeing some team swing for a huge blockbuster that involves the 5th pick and a first rounder next year and obviously more pieces. So I think probably most likely they end up sticking where they're at, but certainly they'll be entertaining any and all offers up until they enter that pick.
All right, Dan, let's make the pick. 5th overall, the New York Giants select.
Yeah, so danced around it quite a bit. I think it was obvious, though, Evan Neal from Alabama. I think that is sort of a slam dunk at this point. It would be an interesting decision if Ike Ekwonu was there, because then you get into which one of those guys you think is better, and that's a whole nother discussion. But I think again, sort of made it easy for me here. The edge rushers are gone, the other tackle is gone. I know Charles Cross has gotten some buzz here, and I know the Giants. From everything I've heard, they are genuinely interested. It just feels like Neal, if we're talking safe here again, is probably a safer pick. I think Cross maybe has a higher ceiling, but if you're looking to just kind of put one in the fairway here on your first pick, I don't think you can go wrong with a guy who's played right tackle, which is a position he'll come into play. Played at Alabama, played in a lot of big games. Has the measurables, has all the traits. So to me, that's kind of a slam dunk pick if that's how the first 4 unfold.
No, look, I'm with you, Dan. You mentioned the extra heat on Cross. I've heard it from 3 different draft analysts that I trust, that they're hearing Cross. Now, does that mean they just like Cross? Does it mean they like him better than Neal and Ekwonu? Like, you don't know the context of that. How do you, if you had your choice of all 4, would Neal be the pick, or would you prefer Ekwonu? How do you kind of stand these guys up next to each other?
Yeah, like I said, I like that they took that decision out of my hands. I'm certainly not an offensive line expert, and it's really like a kind of a Baskin-Robbins thing. Like, pick your flavor. You talk to different scouts, different coaches, and one will say Ekwonu, one will say Neal. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they had Cross ahead of Neal. I think it was Ekwonu, Cross, then Neal. So, I mean, it really reminds me a lot of that Andrew Thomas draft class where you knew who the top guys were, but everyone sort of had a different preference. I think at the time people were a little surprised that Thomas was the first, but there were definitely people who thought he was the best. I think you're going to see that same thing unfold here where I think everyone knows that Cross, Ekwonu, and Neal are going to go in the probably top 10. The order, it feels like Neal and Ekwonu are given a little bit of a nudge over Cross. Between Neal and Ekwonu, I don't think the Giants have to make that decision. I think at least one of them will be gone. And then we get to the Cross love. Maybe both of them are gone because I don't think it's crazy to think that, like, say, Houston and the Jets could take tackles. And then you're in a situation where you love Cross enough to take him at 5. So it's so fascinating, especially with having the 7th pick, coming back around. It's going to be really interesting how they piece this together. But yeah, like I said, I think Neal is a pretty safe pick. So listen, if he's there at 5, I wouldn't hesitate too much to turn that card in.
But final question: how cute did you used this expression before? How cute did you think about getting, knowing you have 2 tackles left and one's definitely going to be there at 7? Did you worry about what the Panthers were going to do at 6? How much are you taking that in consideration here as you try to make that calculation to maximize the value of your picks at 5 and 7?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a unique situation to have 2 top 10 picks and just separated by 1. I mean, I think that the Giants have to be spending some of their time here trying to determine what the Panthers are going to do. And now there's even talk that the Panthers want to trade back. So, it's like you can drive yourself crazy probably trying to figure out all the machinations of how that 6th pick could unfold. But I think that's where you take the best guy. At that point, you don't get too cute. Because I do think if the Panthers stay at 6, and I know there's a lot of quarterback talk there, if they don't take a quarterback, they're probably going to be looking to take a tackle. So, yeah, It's nice to say, oh, well, you just, leave them both there and you get 1 at 7. Well, again, as I said earlier, they evaluate these guys. They don't just flip a coin. Like, they like one of them more than the other. Most likely. It's very unlikely that 2 guys are graded the exact same on their board. So the idea of, hey, one of them will be there, like, I don't think that's how they're going to operate. And I also think that, I'm not going to make the 7th pick for you, but I think Sauce Gardner would be a great fit, and him still being available would be enticing. So I think you're probably better off, if you're going to play that kind of gamble, he's probably more likely to be there at 7 because I think Panthers will take a tackle. So I'm going to get my tackle at 5, and then hopefully a guy like Sauce Gardner's there at 7, rather than saying, I'll just take Sauce now and take whatever tackle is left over. I think that would be the definition of being too cute, and I think that could be a recipe for some sleepless nights, to keep going back to Joe Shane's kind of favorite draft expression.
No, I agree with you. And then Dan Schneier will be with us to pick number 7 at the end of this mock draft. Dan, great stuff, man. I appreciate it. Tell the folks where they can find all your stuff.
Yeah, obviously at The Athletic, and then on Twitter, Duggan21. Certainly be filling it up this next week leading into the draft, and then coming out of it, there'll be plenty of analysis and coverage, so it should be a fun couple of weeks here.
All right, Dan, we'll see you tomorrow. We got Joe Shane live in the auditorium. Old school, baby. We'll see you then, all right?
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Sean.
We thank Dan Duggan from The Athletic for joining us to make the Giants pick at number 5, Evan Neal. Let's do a very quick recap here to make sure everyone understands where we're at. Number 1, Aiden Hutchinson to the Jaguars. Trayvon Walker to the Lions at number 2. Ike Ekwonu to the Houston Texans at 3. Kayvon Thibodeau to the Jets at number 4. Dan Duggan picks Evan Neal for the Giants at number 5. And now joining us to make the selection for the Carolina Panthers at number 6, he's Jonathan Alexander. He covers the Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us today, man. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. All right, what are the Panthers thinking here? I really think they're really one of the pivot points in this draft. I know they've done a ton of work on the quarterbacks, but does that necessarily mean that they're picking one at 6?
No, I don't think so. I think, the Panthers probably share in that sentiment that this draft class is a wild card. Nobody's really sure how good these quarterbacks will be, so taking one is a chance. It's a gamble. And I think the Panthers really have a need at. They know they have a need at offensive line, and they like the top 3 offensive linemen in this draft class, and one's still on the board.
All right, so how is this dynamic working then? Word from the outside looking in is that Matt Rule's kind of on the hot seat. First of all, do you think that's legit, or is that just outside noise?
Yeah, I do think it is legit. They've lost 2 straight. They've had 2 straight 5-win seasons under Matt Rule, and another season like that he wouldn't be able to keep his job. I think the thinking, if you talk to people close to David Tepper, is that you're on the hot seat every year, and so this is definitely a must-win year for Coach Matt Rule.
Yeah, and it seems to be a tough year to have a must-win year, right? When you have Sam Darnold coming back at quarterback, they struck out on the big fish in the quarterback market. You mentioned it. This draft class is not great at quarterback. So, how do you think they're going to try to address this quarterback position so Matt Rule can try to save his job? Quite frankly.
Yeah, I think that they'll try to make the smartest decision. I don't think that they'll do anything desperate, but they are seeking an upgrade at quarterback. And I think, what I know is the two quarterbacks that appeal to them that are still possibly available are Jimmy Garoppolo and Baker Mayfield. So I think that they'll try to make a move for one of those quarterbacks when the price tags for both of those quarterbacks come down.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's push quarterback aside. You mentioned offensive tackle. Any other positions of need you think the Panthers would be trying to target here?
Yeah, the Panthers' top three targets are offensive line, quarterback, and defensive end. So one of those three positions, they would most definitely target there.
How do you think they measure the top of the defensive end class and the top of the offensive tackle class? Because both groups are really positions of strength in this year's class.
Yeah, I think they're on equal footing, really. The top defensive ends along with the top offensive tackles. They think highly of both. So they wouldn't be afraid to take one of those positions if the best available player was there, especially if it was a defensive end. They're not afraid to take a defensive end because they have a need there and they think highly of them.
Now, one thing Giant fans would want to know as they try to navigate the picks 5 and 7 with only the Panthers in between, under any circumstances, do you think the Panthers pick a cornerback, or do you think that's off the board for them?
I think that's off the board for them. I think they like Sauce Gardner, and they think he's worthy of the top 10 picks. However, the cornerback is one of their deepest positions.
Would the Panthers look to trade down in this situation, given the fact that I don't believe they pick again until round 4?
Yeah, definitely. They want a day 2 pick. But the problem with that is you have to have a team that is willing to trade up. And for the Panthers to take that a trade, they would have to get a significant number of assets win this year's draft and next year's draft for them to do that.
No, look, I'm with you, and I think the Giants would like to move down too, Jonathan, and I don't think they're going to be able to find the partner. So I'm with you on that. All right, let's really quickly, who's your pick then at number 6?
My pick is Mississippi State's Charles Cross. The Panthers like him. At first they weren't really sure at the combine, but they've had him in for a visit today, and they've seen the physicals, and they really like him.
If all 3 of those tackles were available, how do you think the Panthers have them ranked 1 through 3?
I know that they love Evan Neal, and they really like Hakeem Ekwonu, and they really like Charles Cross. So that would be my order. Evan Neal, Hakeem Ekwonu, and Charles Cross are how they view that order.
Very good. Jonathan, awesome stuff, man. We appreciate you joining us on this Reporter Mock Draft. We'll talk to you down the road, all right, pal?
All right, thanks for having me.
Don't miss your chance to experience a premier hospitality experience watching Giants games and world-class concerts in 2022 as a Giants suite partner. Limited full-season locations are available, or place a deposit for individual games. Call 888-NYG-1925 or visit giants.com/suites for more information. All right, we thank John Alexander for joining us again. He covers the Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. And now we head over to Dan Schneier. You can check out his work on the Big Blue Banter podcast, and make sure you go check that out. I was just on his show the other day. We had a lot of fun talking draft with him and his co-host Nick, so make sure you guys go check that out. Dan, good to talk to you, man. How are you? Welcome to the Giants Huddle podcast, Beat Reporter Mock Draft.
Thanks for having me back. Thanks for having me on, John. It's great to talk to you again. Anytime I get to talk draft with John Schmelk, I'm a happy man.
Yes, we're going to have some fun here. We're going to talk some Giants, too. So just to recap very quickly, the first 6 picks of this draft, Aiden Hutchinson at 1, Travon Walker at 2, no surprises, Ike Ekwonu at 3. That's still kind of a wild card. Kayvon Thibodeau at 4. Giants, via Dan Duggan of The Athletic, select Evan Neal at number 5. Carolina Panthers say no to the quarterback, and they say yes to the final offensive tackle on the board in Charles Cross at 6. Dan is the pick here at number 7. We had to go double Dan's here. And I think this is a pretty easy selection for you. We'll get to it. Let's talk around it first. What do you think of the first 6 picks here and how the draft has gone so far?
I'd take those first, as a Giants fan, I'd take those first 6 picks any day. Getting Evan Neal, my offensive tackle number 1 at 5, is the ideal scenario. And as overall, those first 6 picks, nothing really jumps out as a surprise to me. It's a little bit, it's pretty much what you expect right now. If there's going to be a surprise, I think you would have seen maybe a team go for the upside of Derek Stingley in the top 6, which I've heard could happen. Maybe a team go for the upside of Malik Willis. But it went according to plan, and now we obviously landed that second Giants first-round pick.
Is there anyone that you were happy to see off the board so you didn't have to make a decision on them?
Yes, that would be Kayvon Thibodeau, because there's 2 players who would have been in my kind of crosshairs for this 7th overall pick, and it makes it a little easier when one of them's off the board.
Do you have any concerns about Thibodeau? Not again, not a bad kid, but some of the off the field, personality stuff that we've heard about with him.
So for me, no, and I talked about this a lot with Nick on the podcast. We don't have access to every single game. We both watched 6 games of Thibodeau, but we didn't see any effort issues in the games we watched. Now, we know people who had more access to the tape say otherwise, so it's hard to say. But as far as the off-field stuff, I kind of like that dog in him. I kind of like that personality and that drive to want to be the best and belief that you are the best. And I actually think it fits well with the Giants. And it's not like the Giants, people talk about it, but it's not like the Giants haven't had that in the past at the edge position. They had probably one of the biggest personalities ever at the edge position, the greatest edge of all time.
Yeah, and by the way, Michael Strahan had a bit of a personality there too.
Yeah.
By the way, just FYI for the people that don't know the man. So yeah, look, I'm with you. Let's talk needs here. How would you rank the Giants' needs here, coming in at 5 and 7 this year for you in the draft?
Yeah, for me, especially with this class, offensive tackle is by far and away the most important need. Just because if you go deeper into this class, there are options at edge that intrigue me at 36. There are options at corner that intrigue me at 36. There are options at safety. There aren't really many options that I think are going to be there at offensive tackle at 36 that intrigue me. So I feel like if you have a chance to get one of these 3 tackles, you have to take it.
I'm with you. Then what would you put second, corner or edge?
Okay. For me, second is corner for a lot of reasons. One, the system. For Wink Martindale's system, you need to have guys who can be on an island in man coverage, because the days of those 2 high looks and the zone-heavy scheme that we've seen from the Giants the past 2 seasons, they're over. We're going to see a lot of cover one. We're going to see a lot of middle-of-the-field close with one safety there. And so you need guys you can rely on the outside. I also am a big believer in pass coverage over pass rushers at this stage of the NFL life, because, look, most of these teams are designed right now on offense to get rid of the ball in 2.5 seconds or less. So you really need guys who can hold up in coverage.
Does the volatility of the cornerback position give you any pause?
That's probably the only thing that gives me pause right there. It's the volatility, and it's the it's not as necessarily the longevity factor as much as the injury factor there. And we've seen some busts there, but overall, you need these guys. Just look at what happened with that Baltimore defense last year when they had their corners go down. It went from the most elite defense probably, or at least one of the 2 or 3 most elite defenses the 2 years before, to a defense that was giving up 500 yards to Joe Burrow.
All right, so let's look ahead. You said you do like some of the pass rushers or corners you might be able to get it at 30, 35, I think, in round 2, right? 36, pardon me. Who are some of the pass rushers or cornerbacks you might like if they can get that far to the top of round 2?
Yeah, so let's start at corner if they do go edge instead at the 7th pick. A guy who originally there was no chance he'd ever be there at 36 might be there now with injury concerns, Andrew Booth. I don't have the medicals on him, but Booth to me is the exact type of corner you want to fit the Wink Martindale system. I think Kyrie Elam is interesting because I think he does somewhat fit the system, but I have some concerns with him. And the next guy for me would be Kyler Gordon, because he may not be getting the buzz that he might not be getting 36 overall buzz right now, but he does fit, in my mind, what Wink Martindale wants to do. Yes, he played a lot of zone at Washington, but if you look at just the snaps and you separate the ones where he was in man coverage, he had a really strong grade. And I believe, according to Pro Football Focus, over 90 was his grade in just man coverage. So, if we're looking at corner in the 2nd round or the 3rd round for the Giants, we want these man coverage corners, these guys who fit what Wink Martindale wants to do. And as far as the edge defenders go, I got a lot of guys I really like who could be there at 36. But I want to start with my favorite here. And my favorite here would be Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State. You watch him play, and this guy is a man with his hair on fire. And the thing I like a lot about him is that he's in my mind at least, he's proven he can take over games. First game of the season last year for Penn State versus Wisconsin. He takes over that game, and in my mind, he's the reason they won that game. It was a close game where I believe they won by a field goal at the end. So I really like Ebiketie. He'd be number one on my list. Boy Mafe out of Minnesota, 6'4", 261, has a lot of the traits you want and the production. I like him a lot. And then a player I think is interesting, John, at 36, that's starting to get a little bit more buzz, is Drake Jackson. You don't always see it on tape, so I understand why there's reservations with Drake Jackson. But if you think about what he can be right now, he's 21 years old, 6'3", 255, has kind of gone back and forth at 245, 265. But if you just look at his edge bend and his burst for a guy that size, you could see potentially where he can make that kind of jump that the Vikings got with Danielle Hunter a few years ago, where he kind of wasn't really all that on tape. He didn't always have the effort, quote unquote, but the traits were there. So those are the guys I'm interested, I would say, at corner and edge at 36.
Yeah, I tell you what, I rewatched Drake Jackson last night, and I sat there and I'm like, you know what? He's one of the few guys that have legitimate bend and dip wins on their tape.
Right.
There aren't many guys in this class that have that. He's one of them. You know, I wonder what weight he's going to play at. He's kind of been all over the place. He played at 270. Then he went down to 245. Then he was at 250. Then he was up at 260. So I don't know where he wants to play, how that's going to affect his play style. I do think he needs to play with some more play strength. But I think if you're looking for pass rush upside with his, ankle flexibility and, those sort of technical things when you're trying to, bend at the top of that rush, winning outside, I think him and a couple other guys in this class are the only couple that could do it. So I'm with you. I think he'd be a really fascinating pick there for Wink Martindale. If you can isolate him on in some of his blitz packages one-on-one, especially if he puts on some weight, he can move with some power too. I think that could be a really interesting addition.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Any other positions, and we'll jump back to 7, but I think we're in Captain Obvious territory here. You mentioned safety, and I agree. I think that is a bit of an underrated need. You could talk about that in the later rounds. You could talk about tight end if you want. What other kind of positions are you thinking about in the later rounds of this draft where the Giants do need to fill some needs?
Yeah, it's interesting because safety isn't viewed by fans right now as a major need, but go look at the Wink Martindale defense over the last few years and see how often he uses 3 safeties on the field. And right now, if I'm a Giants fan, I'm only really trusting one safety for sure on the field at all times that they have on the roster. That's obviously Xavier McKinney. So that's definitely a position that I'm interested in, but I actually feel like that's a position that they can afford to potentially wait on at 36. Because there are some later round guys I like. Specifically, Kirby Joseph comes to mind out of Illinois. He's a player who played in that Lovie-Smith defense for a while, which was not good for him. It wasn't a good fit for him. Finally, first year out of the Lovie-Smith defense last year, gets to play a lot more single high, gets to be that lone guy in the backfield. And I love his range. I love his ability to come downhill as well. So I think he could be really good. Nick Cross is somebody who people talk about as a kind of single high look safety as well. I like the measurables, and I'm okay betting on the traits there, but I didn't really see it when I watched Cross. So Joseph is probably the mid to later round safety that comes to mind. He might be there for them in round 3. And I think on day 3, if we're going for the real late picks, that's where I really start to like a lot of the lesser needs for the Giants, as in wide receiver and running back. 2 of my favorite sleepers in this class at any position are Tyquan Thornton out of Baylor, the wide receiver who's 6'2", 180, ran a 4.28 at the combine. So you're thinking, oh, okay, I'm just going to watch a track guy when I watch him. Then you watch him, and he's plucking balls out of the air with his hands. He's strong at the contact point. You're like, this kind of might be a discount version of Christian Watson who has stronger hands and is better at the catch point. So why is he not discussed as a potential, day 2 pick as Watson is, early day 2 pick? So Tyquan Thornton out of Baylor. And then Ty Chandler's my guy, my running back out of UNC. He's getting no buzz whatsoever. Ran a 4, despite running a 4.38. But when I watch his film, I see somebody who, 1, can run between the tackles because he has really good vision and he makes really good cuts. 2, has the long speed. And then 3, shows up as a receiver. He ran a seam route against Wake Forest where he high-pointed a football that Sam Howell put off target, and it looked like a receiver out there. I know he's 23, about to turn 24. That's the skepticism there. But if you're taking a running back, do you really have to worry about the age? How much of a long-term play is it if you're taking a running back on day 3? You kind of can afford to get away with just 4 good years out of that. So those are some of the guys I like there. And then tight end is a position that I would not take until day 3, John. I like a lot of guys at the tight end position who I all think are going to come off the board on day 3, starting with Charlie Kolar ending with Jake Ferguson, two guys who I think are vastly underrated in this draft class. So those are the positions I'd target late.
All right, let's jump back to number 7 here, Dan, as we get the Giants' second pick. They picked Evan Neal at 5. They're sitting there at 7. And, oh, wait a second. Do you want to make any phone calls? Are you trying to get out of this pick, or are you sticking and picking?
So it's a really interesting question, and those who listen to my podcast know I'm typically a trade back guy. I like to trade back, but not in this class. Right now, I think that the way this draft sets up at 5 and 7 for the Giants, it just fits too perfectly with matching need with talent, with the best player available, in my opinion, on the board, where they took it at Evan Neal at 5, and now, again, the best player available at a position of major need. So if the board falls as it did in this mock, John, I'm not going to trade this pick back.
What would it take for you to move if this particular player you're looking for wasn't there? How far down would you want to go? What are you aiming to get back? What are your goals there in a potential trade down?
Yeah, that's a great question. Some people have floated the idea of the 2 Saints first-round picks. That's not my goal. My goal would be to get a 2023 first-round pick, preferably from a team that I project to be one of the losing teams in 2022 during the 2022 season. The goal would be to set yourself up for a potential quarterback trade-up in 2023 if Daniel Jones doesn't work out in year 1 with Brian Dable. That's kind of where I'm at. It would take that to get me to move. Definitely a 2023 first.
All right, make your pick at number 7 here, Dan.
All right, at number 7 overall, I'm taking my guy. I probably tipped it off, but it is Ahmad Sauce Gardner, that is, the corner out of Cincy. Now, first, I will say this. An interesting thought process here is that if you watch all the tape of Gardner and you watch all the tape of Derek Stingley, the other corner in this class, it's fair to say Stingley's 2019 film was better than any season Gardner had. But here's the key but. Joe Shane has said one of the things he's looking for in this draft class, especially up top, is dependability. And that's something Gardner gives you. He had 851 snaps as a press man coverage corner, according to PFF. No one's anywhere close to that. And they were good snaps as a press man coverage corner. He is just the perfect cookie-cutter fit for the Wink Martindale defense. 99 percentile arm length, 98 percentile height, 89 percentile hand size. Great film. He's tough at the point of contact, has the length, has everything you want about an island cornerback. And I just think you put him in Wink Martindale's defense, and he's going to shine.
Who was the guy that you would have had a real tough choice choosing between if Sauce was here and then you had to choose between him and an edge? Who would have made that decision toughest for you?
Thibodeau's the one who makes it toughest for me, without a doubt. Assuming, obviously, Hutchinson doesn't make it that far, and I don't think anyone thinks he will. It would probably be Thibodeau as the only one for me, to be completely honest. I'm not big on Walker at all. I'd actually take Jermaine Johnson over Walker, to be honest.
All right. Dan, good stuff. Tell the folks where they can find all your great content.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, John. Always fun to talk football with you. You can find my content over on the Big Blue Banter podcast. That's Big Blue Banter. And if you like fantasy sports, check me out on CBSSports.com, where I cover fantasy sports.
Yeah, I might get some emails from CBS with fantasy baseball advice with your name on it. I think that happens. Dan, good stuff, my friend. We appreciate the time. Stay safe out there and enjoy the draft.
Thank you, John. It's going to be great.
We thank Dan Schneier from Big Blue Banter for joining us to make the Giants pick at 7. We thank Dan Duggan for pick number 5 and the rest of our crew, Mike DiRocco, Jeff Risdon, John Harris, Rich Cimini, and Jonathan Alexander. Everybody, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Giants Huddle podcast. I am John Schmelk. That's our beat reporter mock draft. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time on the Giants.